Hey, and now we're going to talk about business to business segmentation um, as opposed to consumer segmentation. So here we're going to look at different kinds of things because businesses operate differently when they're making purchasing decisions, deciding what products fit their needs as opposed to a consumer deciding. So we talked a little bit about this back in chapter 3. We'll go into a little more depth now when we talk about segmentation for B2B. Um, targeting and segmenting. So same kinds of things. We need to know what behaviors and attitudes the businesses we're targeting have. So lots of variables. Most businesses have purchasing patterns. They buy more at certain times of the year than other times of the year. Make their purchasing decisions, especially for major purchases. At certain times of the year. They may have budget issues that they have open to budget or open to buy situations at certain times of the year. Um, need to understand whether the business is open to technology or not, how loyal they are to their suppliers, how price sensitive they are. You'd be surprised. Some businesses are extremely price sensitive, and some businesses are much more interested in quality and continuity of service as opposed to price. So governments often are constrained by law to do bidding, but private businesses are not, and oftentimes they find it more efficient to have a continuing relationship rather than a price relationship. How often do they order and how large are their orders? It's important to know, and if you're targeting a particular market, and what kind of benefits they expect. So these are a little different from consumer segmentation on behaviors and attitudes. Let's look at demographics. The demographics exist for business just like they do for consumers. Um, we're not going to look at ethnicity or age or income necessarily, but we will look at business size. So we're looking at large businesses or small businesses. They operate very, very differently. We're looking at governments who also operate quite differently from private sector businesses or nonprofits, which operate differently. So that's a demographic. So business size, what industry are they in? Is the product we're marketing a cross-industry product, or is it designed specifically for one industry? Um, how old is the business? Is it a startup, or is it a very mature business that's been around for a long time? How you target those kinds of businesses is quite different. And then finally, what's the ownership structure? Is it a publicly held business? Is it a privately held business? Is it a single person who owns the business, or is it multiple people that own the business? Or, as I mentioned before, is it a nonprofit or a government um, agency where you really don't have owners? You have stakeholders, but not necessarily owners. So that's a demographic breakdown of how we might look at businesses. Um, geographics, uh, international, national, regional, state, local, or city issues, and climate has a lot to do with how I might target my businesses, depending on what it is that I'm selling. So if I'm selling rock salt to municipalities to use in the winter on roads, obviously climate is going to play into that, and size of the city or state that I'm selling to will play into that. So I need to know those variables. Um, so what we're trying to do is we want to group our customers by geographics. So for instance, if I'm selling Walmart, they're located all over the US. So I need to know how they buy. first of all, where's the concentration of outlets? It's all over the US. Do they have different geographical needs? And how do they do their buying? Do they buy everything in Bensenville, Arkansas for the whole country, or do they have localized buying? Do they expect their suppliers to ship to the stores? Do they expect the suppliers to ship to regional warehouses, distribution centers, or do they expect the product to be shipped to one location and then Walmart will distribute it to their distribution centers and stores? How does that work? And where are most of their outlets? That kind of geographics is really, really important. Now, Walmart's a huge company that covers the whole US, but think about other retailers or customers that we might be selling to they may have lots of outlets in the Northeast and not so many in the Midwest or the Southwest or whatever. So you need to know that before you figure out what segment you need to target. So this chart is somewhat useful. This comes out of your textbook. Things that you might look at in terms of market, so growth rate, where the product is in its life cycle, which we'll talk about a little later. How price elastic the product is, how much power the buyers have, how cyclical is the product that we're selling or the business that we're selling to, economic factors, competitive factors, business environment factors. I'm not going to read all of these, but you guys can read them. What we're talking about here is identifying which segments are going to be the most promising and what order we should enter them in. So how attractive are they? And then using a ranking approach, this is another thing. We went through this a little bit last time based on when we were going through the decision criteria. How do we take and look at decisions? That was a mathematical approach to decision making. This is a mathematical approach to choosing among segments. So you may take all the targets that you've identified and rate each target based on some criteria. Then you're going to develop weights for each of those criteria and a score. So we can start to quantify our judgments based on these. And this works for both. We've kind of left the business to business thing. This works for both business to business and business to consumer targeting. So how do I do this? Well, let's take a look at an example. So we have 3 different segments that we've identified for our product. It doesn't really matter what the product is, and it really doesn't matter whether it's business to business or business to consumer. These are 3 distinct segments. We're trying to decide which segment is the most attractive to enter and which one perhaps we may enter all 3 eventually, but which one should we put our effort on and which one should we go to first, concentrate on first. So in this particular area, we've come up with some scales for a few things. So we looked at how fast the segment is growing. We looked at how much superiority, competitive superiority, so we're better than our competitors or not in terms of competition, in terms of competitiveness. And then the third category is how well does this fit with our resources. So, and we've assigned a 1 to 5 scale, which is pretty standard. Now, obviously, this is subjective. We're making this scale, but it helps us grade things. So, growth potential, segment B is the best. Competitive, we're most competitive in segment A. So we have a product that's very, very competitive, but it's a relatively average growth market. And then fit with our resources, the best one there is product B. So if we add across 3, 5, and 2, we get 10 for score for A, 13 for score for B, and 9 for score for C. That means, at least using this kind of ranking system, that B may be the most attractive one to enter. Doesn't make your decision for you. Never use these things to make decisions. It helps you with your decision. It gives you a scorecard and it gives you a quantification, which then can help you overall make your decision. So we've kind of gotten through that, but let's talk about some strategies for approaching the target market that we've decided to target, the segmented market that we've decided to target. So there are really three different kinds of marketing we can use. We can use what's called concentrated marketing, so we can just target one segment and concentrate all our marketing efforts on that one segment. We can use undifferentiated marketing, so we target all segments with the same marketing strategy. Or we can differentiate and create separate marketing strategy for each segment. So let's say we're selling, what shall we sell today? We're selling seedlings or flowers to be put in gardens. So concentrated marketing would say we're going to look at the different segments, and the segments might be commercial segments for businesses. There might be a segment for people who have professional gardeners, and then there might be a segment for people who do their own gardening, so do-it-yourself people. So we're going to concentrate on just one of those. So we're going to put all of our efforts into one of those segments, whichever segment we think is the most attractive for our potted plants. The second strategy is say, well, there's these three segments, we're just going to market the same to all of them. We're not going to have any special marketing specifically targeting any one of those segments. We're selling plants, and whoever wants to buy them can buy them. And the three identified segments are businesses, professional gardeners, and individuals who do it yourself. That's undifferentiated marketing. We're just going to say, hey, we got plants here, come get them. And then differentiated marketing, we're going to have a different strategy for each segment. So we may have a bulk pricing strategy for professional gardeners who have lots of clients and buy lots of plants. So we may give them a discount, or we may offer special services to them. We might deliver the plants to the site that they're doing the landscaping. For individuals, we may have a store where people come and pick them up, and we're going to target them with newspaper advertising, let's say. And then for the businesses, we're going to have special salespeople that go out and call on the businesses and say, hey, we can provide all the plants for your plantings around your building. Differentiated marketing, three different strategies for three different markets. Those three strategies pretty much cover the landscape. That's a joke, I guess. For coverage strategies. For positioning is about differentiation. We have to convey value that the brand and sets the brand apart. And you see positioning going on all around you in consumer goods. What's the positioning for Mercedes-Benz? What's the positioning for Kia? What's the positioning for other products in the automobile market? How is Ferrari positioned? How is Rolls-Royce positioned? How is BMW positioned? Each one of those products has a position in the marketplace, and you probably know what it is in most cases because they're very well defined and very very understandable. So how do you differentiate? You can have product features. So you can have more luxurious seats if you're a car manufacturer, or bigger engines, or better handling. Those are all features. You can have higher levels of service for your product or lower levels of service for your product. You can sell through certain kinds of channels or dealers. In the case of cars, they have individual dealers. And if you're buying a Mercedes, there may not be very many dealers. If you're buying a Chevrolet, there's lots of dealers. So different kinds of channel attributes. Pricing, obviously, definite differentiator. Mercedes are generally more expensive than Kias. That partly is because of the cost to build them, but it's partly the positioning of the product. If Mercedes were cheaper, would they sell more? Perhaps for a while, but it might hurt their positioning because part of their positioning is status. So, and when you're creating positioning, you also need to look at how your competitors are positioning their product. So that pretty much wraps up chapter 4. So segmentation, positioning, and targeting. And please answer the questions after this, and hopefully you're working on your case study as well. Thank you very much.